Why am I spending a hot and sunny afternoon in a graveyard? Well, loads of you, and I mean loads, have been asking for a video on Wallasey Tower. Well, one person did over a year ago, but you know I'm not one to disappoint. So here we are, a place where ignoring this sign could mean a short ride to your final destination. This is Wallasey, and it lies within a cemetery of all places in the town of Wallasey, on the mouth of the River Mersey, on the northeastern corner of the Wirral Peninsula. It started life in the early 1970s as a filler site for the BBC, and the site acquisition team apparently struggled to get a spot anywhere other than here for a transmitter. Tony Smith, one of the installation engineers who's sadly no longer with us, recalled that the excavator that was digging the trench for the copper earthing at Wallasey pulled out a gravestone buried deep into the earth with the letters RIP carved into it. Incidentally, the earth mat consists of 72 copper radials buried underground. The site today is made up of a brick enclosure that surrounds the mast, an omnidirectional radiator. This means that the whole structure is the radiating antenna. It's guyed to the ground with 8 sets of guy wires, complete with ceramic insulators above ground and fenced enclosures at ground level. There's a lightning protection strip at the top of the mast, and it appears that the transmitters are housed in this separate brick building close by. Vandal grease, sharp spikes, and the threat of death are in place to keep people out, and it would appear that the maintenance department at Talksport have taken this warning too, as the compound itself is severely overgrown, despite this transmitter still being live. At more remote sites you don't tend to see such fortification, usually a wooden fence will suffice, but not at Wallasey. I like to provide you with views and vantage points that you don't usually get to see, so we can look inside the brick compound to see the deteriorating wooden inner enclosure. I'd hazard a guess that someone has climbed on this and the roof has given way. Not a good idea given the high voltages at play here. There's 3 satellite dishes inside the compound too. I can't be certain what they all do or did, but I'd guess that the larger one is receiving the Talksport feed that goes to the transmitter. If anyone can clear up what the other 2 are for, and I'm assuming they're defunct, then let us know in the comments. From the top of the tower we get an amazing view beyond the Wirral and over to the port of Liverpool. I've got something really cool to show you over there in just a minute, but first let's look at the stations that transmitted from Wallasey over the years, as it's had a busy life. The first user was BBC Radio Merseyside, and transmission started from Wallasey in January of 1973. The original frequency was 1484 kHz until November 1978, when it changed to 1485 kHz, or 202 meters at 2 kilowatts, where it remained for the rest of its life. In August 2012, as part of a trial that the BBC carried out, Wallasey began broadcasting a loop informing listeners that the station was currently unavailable and that they should retune to DAB, FM or an online service. The trial lasted for 5 weeks to see what effect it had on audiences and indeed if they'd retune elsewhere. Today, or at least in December 2023, according to Radar, the station had a weekly audience of 179,000 listeners and a 7.8% audience share. It's safe to assume that many of those listeners were still AM listeners, for whom the station likely provided a lifeline for the elderly, sick or lonely. However, prior to this, in March of 2020, BBC Radio Merseyside's 1485 AM licence was handed back to Ofcom, and transmission ceased from Wallasey for good.
This is BBC Radio Merseyside on 1485 medium wave. We're no longer broadcasting our programmes on this frequency. We are still on air, as usual, on FM, digital radio and Freeview, and we're online as well. To continue enjoying our programmes, you'll need to retune your radio. On FM...
The next station to launch was BBC Radio 1 on December the 20th, 1982. From the 23rd of November 1978, a new European medium wave frequency plan was implemented, which helped to eliminate cross-channel interference and enabled countries to broadcast at higher powers. Radio 1 was eventually moved to its new home of 1107 kHz or 271 meters at 0.5 kilowatts from Wallasey, but by this time it was clear that the station's FM network was non-existent. During the following years, Radio 1 began utilising VHF FM, and the AM service eventually closed from Wallasey on June 30th, 1994.
This is BBC Radio 1. We no longer broadcast on medium wave through the night. But you can catch up with the latest music and the fastest news by turning to 1FM between 97 and 99. Radio 1 on medium wave will reopen at 6 a.m. Retune to FM now.
This period of downtime on 1107 was short-lived, however, as Talk Radio UK launched from here on the same frequency on February the 14th, 1995, still at 0.5 kilowatts, with the station rebrand to TalkSport taking place on January the 17th, 2000. Today, TalkSport is the only station radiating from Wallasey, but the broadcaster submitted a request to Ofcom in 2023 proposing to reduce the coverage of its national AM service from 93% to 89.9%. It said it would do this by closing 4 of its 22 transmitter sites at Dumfries in Dumfries and Galloway, Kingston upon Hull in East Riding of Yorkshire, Fern Barrow in Bournemouth, and Greenside Scalp in Tayside. To many, this marked the beginning of the end for TalkSport's AM presence, and another blow to the ever-shrinking AM presence in the UK as a whole. Moving back in time again, however, to March the 27th, 1993, Virgin Radio launched from Wallasey on 1197 kHz at 0.4 kilowatts. The station evolved over the years into Absolute Radio, but on Wednesday the 4th of January 2023, Bauer Media Group announced that all of the station's remaining AM transmitters would be turned off and that it would no longer be broadcasting on AM from Friday the 20th of January. From that date, a closed-down loop carried information advising listeners, stating that Absolute Radio was, quote, no longer available on AM, and redirecting them to DAB and streaming applications. Let's quickly leave the graveyard and run over to the docks, and to what I want to say is the Stena terminal, although I'm not 100% sure. This is Borsong, an over $50 million, almost 200 metre long, 25,500 tonne roll-on roll-off ship that allows vehicles to literally roll on at one end and roll off at the other. Borsong has 2,863 lane metres, can carry containers, and is fitted with a 4-stroke medium-speed diesel engine, which is capable of producing 12,000 kilowatts at 600 RPM. It's powerful, looks great, and is huge, but still only a baby amongst the many larger ships out there. Anyway, today Wallasey Transmitter is an underused, unloved skeleton of its former self, and I am, like I'm sure you are, really bothered by the rate in which AM transmitters are closing across the UK. Why can't they be made available cheaply and easily to fledgling stations? There's certainly not many being removed, so now would be the time, before they deteriorate to the point that they need to be dismantled. Let me know your thoughts on the death of AM in the comments. I personally hate it and wish somebody would come along and snap up the transmitter sites, because despite what the commentators say, I say there's still a place for it. Or maybe it's just for the reminiscers and hardcore DXers.